What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Roll With It, your BJJ and travel podcast brought to you by Seen and Met To. I want to start real quick by saying thank you to all our current listeners and to everybody that just joined the show. Welcome, and I hope you really enjoy this. Well, let's not say any more. To get us started, we have Ms. Gillian Davis. Jump right into it. Let's get a little bit of your background. So I know you are brown belt and you co-owned or co-run the academy with your husband?
Yeah, so my husband opened up the business in 2009, and now I help him run it. And obviously now that we're married, it's part of our lives.
Right. So how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu?
I started in December 2011. Actually, my son started before me. He started around September of that year. The pediatrician wanted him to get a little healthier, and he wasn't very interested in sports, so we put him into jiu-jitsu. And then I was like, okay, sure, I'll give it a try. Why not? So I was a pack-a-day smoker, 210 pounds, played video games all night long, and I was like, I need to do something with my life that's healthier, and the regular gym was just far too boring. So I was like, well, might as well learn how to defend myself, see if I can get into shape that way.
So you were a smoker and a gamer. Any of those two still current?
I still play a little bit of World of Warcraft on and off, not nearly at the level that I did. I used to play very competitively back in the day when it first came out, but I just don't have, enough time in my schedule to give it all of the time that I need to play at the level that I enjoy. I definitely don't smoke anymore.
Well, that's really cool to hear. I know there's a lot of people out there that are still on that smoking chain kind of thing and, finding ways to quit. How did that happen?
Basically, I wanted to compete at a high level. Like when I first started out, I really just did it to get healthy. And so I was still actually smoking at the very beginning of my training. But once I did my first tournament and I realized that being good on the mats in a competitive sense, going 100% just wasn't compatible with smoking, not in any way, shape or form. And so I just kind of had to make a decision, and I figured, I might as well take the healthier route.
That's so cool. That's really cool. Yeah, my biological mom actually has tried quitting many, many times. But I believe to the day she's still right around a pack or maybe somewhere around there, maybe more. I'm not really sure. But man, yeah, that's really cool. I've heard more people want to quit and not be successful than actually being successful.
Well, it's hard because I actually enjoyed smoking. I mean, minus the whole cancer thing, which we all know about, which is a reason that everybody should stop, but it's highly addictive, and I actually enjoyed it. I picked it up not long after my dad died, around 15, and I smoked a pack a day probably all the way up until 29. But yeah, at some point you got to find something that's more important to you than that. And I basically got to the point where cigarettes got really expensive, and all that money was better spent on, boxing gloves and private lessons. And so I just sort of transitioned that money elsewhere.
Oh yeah. It's funny how a lot of people, and this comes up in a lot of conversations I have on the day to day, they have, something they really like doing, and then suddenly all their money's going back to jiu-jitsu. Like they completely cut other things off because of jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
And it's weird because all we really need is a pair of shorts and a t-shirt or pajamas, right?
Indeed.
Where does all that money go to? I want to
know. At the beginning for me, anyway.
Most definitely. So you mentioned a kid. How many kids do you have?
So I have an almost 17-year-old from my first marriage, and I have a 19-month-old. My 17-year-old is a son, and my 19-month-old is my daughter.
So I want to give a little bit of a background because I'm going to be asking you questions, and I want people to know where these questions are coming at random. So I've heard of Gillian through an article that was posted on Facebook a couple days ago. And I found it very interesting because it was first of all, the writer did a very good job on having this short snap, but full of your life.
Yes.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Kinda, right? Like in the past couple of years. So I found it very interesting. Very good articulations on there. I always give praise for people that can write really good because I can certainly speak better than I can write. And I can certainly think better than I can talk. But it did mention that you have a full-time career, got your PhD, and just had a baby.
Correct.
And you're running an academy.
Yes.
So, yeah, I feel like a total bum when I read your resume. I train and take care of my dog. That's all I do.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I was also going to law school, and I found it that, yeah, that's pretty much all I had time for when I was going to law school. Like, just jujitsu, the dog, and law school, and everything else kind of came like, I don't know. It was didn't have time or didn't have the energy, didn't have the brain power for it. But you studied. Not only did you just study it, but it was a PhD in. Let me look at my notes real quick because it's a mouth. It's quite a bit. Microbiology and molecular
genetics. Yeah.
Genetics. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you get into that? Because it's kind of. I find that a lot of people that actually get their PhD in something, and then get a PhD in something as like complicated as this. I want to say complicated.
Sort of specialized, right?
Usually, right. It usually comes from somewhere. There's an origin for it. So I don't know. Is there something that truly drove you there?
So a lot of it was a bunch of happy accidents. So I've always been a huge tech nerd my whole life. I told you that I gamed at a pretty high level, and I put computers together, and I've always done some programming in my spare time. And when I was doing all that, I didn't really want to pursue a career in technology because I was playing on my computer all the time, and I didn't want to sit at a computer at work and then come home and be on a computer all night. So I originally was going to school for nursing because I had done some work as an auto mechanic on bulk propane trucks. I had done computer repair, and I had worked as a volunteer EMT for the first aid squad in my town. I actually spent 2 weeks up at 9/11 in New York helping out with that. And through all of that, I kind of realized that I enjoyed fixing things, and I enjoyed fixing people more than I enjoyed fixing inanimate objects, which led me to go to school for nursing. As I was getting through the nursing prerequisites, it started to dawn on me that I don't really like people very much. Like, I like people, but I don't like having to be not genuine with them. I don't want to have to lie to you or placate you. It's just, I'm bad at those things. So somebody came through to talk to our class about doing a career in laboratory technology where you would work in like a hospital lab and you would still be able to help people, but you wouldn't have to deal with them. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm totally switching programs. So I switched over to that. And my favorite class by far was microbiology. So that's sort of what sparked that interest for me. So I got through my 2 years of medical laboratory technology school, and I worked at a local hospital for a while, but nobody had full-time jobs because the economy was terrible. And so I figured, well, I might as well just keep taking classes. So I took organic chemistry. And once you take organic chemistry, you might as well get a bachelor's degree because that's probably the hardest class you have to take for your undergraduate. So I transferred to a 4-year university. And there I did some research, and I did like some microbiology stuff, but more environmental microbiology. So growth studies on different types of organisms and stuff like that. And then I was like, well, I finished my bachelor's and now I have a ton of debt, so I might as well get a PhD because what does it matter at this point? And in the States, it's not so bad because when you do a PhD in the science, because you work the whole time that you're there, you're actually paid and your tuition is waived. So I made like a very low income, but I made money to do my PhD. So it wasn't as bad as people think it is. Yeah, go ahead.
You say in the States, if you're getting a PhD in science, you actually get paid for it
Correct.
doing it?
Correct.
Or you're working?
Yes. It's a full-time job. So you're doing research on behalf of the university. So your classes are covered and tuition is waived, and then you make like a stipend. I think the average rate in the US is about $30,000 a year.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. And I'm pretty sure like 90% of the people out there have no idea about this.
Yeah, and you don't need a master's degree to do it either. You just need a bachelor's. So you just go straight from bachelor's to, applying to PhD schools. It's not easy to get in, but it's, it's a doable thing.
Right. Well, it's coming from somebody that has a, super high standard resume here. So I don't believe it, but okay, I'll take it because you did it. I'll buy it.
So I think that I had a sort of easier path than most because I had like this non-traditional, I was an adult, I had taken time off of high school, I had a kid. So like I probably satisfied like 12 different, equal opportunity whatevers. So they were just knocking a bunch of those out when they accepted me. And then in our first year, you have to rotate to labs. And I thought I was going to go work on antibiotic resistance, which was something that I had encountered in the hospital. Like there's more strains of like MRSA, stuff like that. I find it very interesting. So I thought I was going to go down that path, but I ended up doing a rotation in a lab that did human genetics. And I ended up doing computer programming based on human genetics. And I ended up falling in love with it. And so then I just ended up doing my PhD in that lab instead of the one that I expected to do it in.
Wow, very very interesting. So you mentioned something also that kind of just gave me an idea right now, or theory. Do you think jiu-jitsu people tend to not really like people? Because I feel like most people that practice jiu-jitsu have a job where they're techs or don't really have to deal with people.
Yeah, I think that like it takes a special kind of personality to get on the mats. I think you have a pretty even divide too. Like I've encountered a lot of super artistic people that are very introverted that make their way to the mats. That's not me. I can't even draw a stick figure. But my husband is a musician prior to doing this, and he did high level BMX. So that's what brought him to this. For me, it's more an analytical approach. And so it's interesting too, because we tend to learn very differently. I take comprehensive notes every time we go to a seminar, and he just sort of watches. And then when we go home, he can look at my notes and he can teach me everything that we did. So like it ends up being a good pairing.
So what belt is your husband?
He's also a brown belt. So he's been training martial arts for 30 years, but he pursued more of the stand-up path than going in the gi. And so our school is actually an MMA school. We teach gi jiu-jitsu, no gi jiu-jitsu, and then we teach stand-up classes too. And he got back into the gi basically the same time I did. So even though it's funny because people will say, well, you know, how can it be good to have, you know, a coach that's the same level as you? And it's like, well, I mean, I've won world championships, so clearly he knows what he's doing, right? Like
something's working.
Right. You know, and the belt represents the gi, which is not as much what we spend time on. We're more on a no gi focus. But you know, so we basically ended up getting ranked together. So it's sort of a running joke that I ask our head instructor, who's Eric Paulson out of Combat Submission Wrestling, always to do Gary's promotion first. So like he outranks me at least by a couple of seconds.
First you, now you.
Last time they promoted the baby first, though, so that was some bullshit.
Your 17-year-old?
No, my 19-month-old. They got her a little brown belt and they put a stripe on it.
Oh wow. Well, I mean, 2 brown belts made her, right? So she's got to have all the knowledge.
Yeah, she's a little bit of a bully, so we'll see.
So you both run the academy. Mm-hmm. Do you teach as well? Are you primary instructor or anything?
Before our daughter came. Now really like one of us can only be on a mat at a time. Obviously we had family and stuff that's willing to help us, but we didn't have a baby so that, you know, we could call in babysitters nonstop. So I prefer to spend my time with her. I do take some of the classes when we can have somebody come in, and I also teach privates. We have a lot of female students that sometimes prefer a one-on-one environment. So.
I see. Do you feel that, I mean, obviously because you both are, I mean, are a couple and are running the academy, do you still feel there's like an equal acceptance from the students when either one of you is teaching?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Do you think that's a something that came from y'all's creation, or
I think it just comes I think it comes from the type of student that we accept. So we don't actually let anybody join our school straight up. We require that adults do at least a 2-week trial and kids do a 4-week trial. We don't want people who aren't going to show up. We don't want people who just aren't going to fit in culturally. We've had a few in the past. It's like having a cancer that metastasizes. It's just not worth it. So we're very cautious to screen the folks that come in. And if basically can't handle getting like, you know, rolling with a smaller female and getting worked over without turning into, you know, a tremendous asshat, then they can leave.
That's a very interesting point of view, because so actually I spent quite a bit of time looking for my next academy. I spent my first 4 or 5 years with one specific academy, very loyal to them. And then things got weird towards the end, and then I moved.
Yeah.
And then after that, I kind of spent it sort of as a nomad. I started adult in kids jiu-jitsu in Germany. So I ran that club for a couple years, and then moving back, I knew I had to get a lineage started, like
right.
I mean, not started, following a black belt. And I went through a lot of schools and gave them a lot of like trials, like let me try to see if you and I mesh and things like that. And I found a lot of people didn't really understand where I was coming from, but it was exactly that. I was trying to make sure it was going to work out, and there was, their philosophy fit my ideas and things like that as well.
I think it's very important. You spend a lot of time and get really intimate with the people you train with. Like it is an extended family. And if it's not a good fit, like that's not a comfortable thing. That doesn't help you get to the school to get on the mats, right? That makes you not want to be there.
Exactly. And I never really saw that from any, except the last instructor, the one I finally settled with, or not settled, but it was, it's a perfect match in my opinion. But I never saw that from any of the schools I went to where I felt like I was also being trialed. It was more of a, you'll be great here. Give me your, $200 a month or whatever, and
yeah, we don't hard
we'll
sell at all. We're like, here's the information. If you have questions, let us know. Like, we want you to want to be here. If you don't want to be here, please don't sign up. Like, canceling you is like a major pain in the ass paperwork wise, and we're just not looking to do that.
And I feel like that's a very cool thing to do because obviously it's working for you and it's making it successful.
Yeah, no, the school's has been growing steadily. So we have no complaints, and we're fine with being a little smaller than everyone. We're not looking to have, 40 people on the mats. We have, our average class size is between 10 and 12, and we have anywhere from 2 to 3 instructors on the mats, and our students are all getting hands-on attention from higher level belts, and that's the type of atmosphere we want.
Well, and I feel like that's the best recipe to make champions too, no?
Yeah, being able to actually, get the attention you need during the course of the class. There's never a drill that we're doing that, instructor doesn't have eyes on you for at least some portion of it to help you correct anything. And I think that's really important.
And you have a pretty good track record on yourself. Your MMA record's pretty good, right? It's
3-1. Yeah, 3-1.
3-1.
Yeah.
And then you won double gold as a purple belt?
At double gold at Nogi Worlds as a purple belt, and double gold at Nogi Pans as a blue belt. And then like a couple like silvers at gi pans and stuff like that. But, no golds in like the major gi tournaments.
So I know you had to take time off from the tournaments between your PhD and your baby and everything else. Now that you had the baby, I know you just took a fight to win.
Yeah.
I want to say congratulations on that split, just because, we talked about it a little bit, and I had never heard somebody say it in such a positive way when they actually took that split. And you said at least one judge saw it my way, and you were pleased with that. You were actually happy with your performance. And I feel like a lot, especially women, including myself, we put a lot of pressure on always getting the win and always getting performance and not losing. And then when we do lose, it's hard for us to take that as a I still learned something. It could still be a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of an interesting thing, right? So we took the fight, and we didn't plan life around it as much as we used to. So back before, when I took like super fights and whatever, I put in like a full 12-week training camp. I was on the mats, between 5 and 7 days a week. And I just didn't appreciate like how much life had changed. I got in a total of 7 no-gi classes since my pregnancy leading up to this fight. And I got some time in with my husband on the mats where my son would watch the baby, or I would roll with my son because he's a blue belt and he's about my weight. And he's actually very feisty, especially for no-gi. I host a women's open mat once a month where a bunch of ladies come in from all sorts of different schools and we work to help each other. And so that was good too. But I just didn't get the time in that I normally get in. I was going against somebody who's like, a multi-IBJJF champion, many gold medals, trains very hard. And my goal was to go out there. And I said to my husband in the car on the way up there, I'm like, if I lose, it'll be by decision. Like, I'm confident in my defensive game. I'm confident in my offensive game. And so to take it to a split decision, it's just like, there's no shame in that. I will say though, that split decisions are my least favorite across the board. If I had to pick, I would rather lose by unanimous decision. I would rather win by unanimous decision. I mean, the difference between a split decision loss and a split decision win is 1 vote, which to me is like this was a tie, but we had an odd number of people voting on the match. And that's why when you drop a split decision, it's like, well, like, you know, if you brought in 2 more people and you made the vote out of 5, it very easily could have gone the other way. And so how can you be mad at that, right? Like, you were in it. And so, you know, I'm very proud of my performance. I think I did a good job. I think I attacked the whole time. I felt good out there. My cardio felt good. And to take it that far with somebody who's training that much and that hard, like, there's no shame in that. That's a win.
So, going back a little bit more on your mentality, right? Because even you talking about this, and it's still it's very inspiring actually to hear you speak of it, and the way you kind of see all the cards like put on the table. How do you specifically prepare mentally? Because you've gone through like your personal life and jiu-jitsu. You've gone through some obstacles that many people shy away from. You know, a lot of people don't pursue that PhD because they feel, you know, they have other things in life getting in the way, or how could I have a baby right now? I'm doing my PhD, or how could I even try to run a school right now if I'm doing family and work and things like that. So I want to know what's like your day-to-day mentality, you know, like people with those excuses, especially, you know, younger people, millennials, including myself, that, you know, we look at things like, oh, I don't have time. That's always the thing. I don't have time. But there is clearly time. I was just talking to my spouse yesterday about this, and I was like, how much time would we gain if we deleted social media from our life?
Seriously.
Like that alone for me, I feel like it would clear up at least 2 hours of my day. But I want to know what's your day-to-day mentality? Like, how do you push yourself through these things?
I actually found that doing more to the point of almost not being able to do it all was a better place for me than having just a few things on my plate. When I had just a few things on my plate, I would like procrastinate, and then I would miss deadlines and I wouldn't get things done. And I always felt like I didn't have time. And so then I just started like trying to assess what kind of person I am. And I am for sure a procrastinator. I am definitely predisposed to be lazy. I like to sit around. I like to do nothing as often as I possibly can. And so what I did was, like, when I started making my college schedule, and I knew that I was bad at doing things like homework, especially stuff I don't want to do. I'm really bad at doing stuff I don't want to do. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to schedule my classes exactly 2 hours apart. So that way it's too short for me to go home, because if I do that, I probably won't come back for the second class. And it's still a big enough gap where I can either do homework for my first class or I can get to the gym between my classes. Like, I tried to schedule my things that I had to do in such a way that I would have to be there and show up to them. And then over time, the more I did that and the more I sort of made my schedule in that way, the more I naturally was able to just accomplish more. I actually found my last semester of undergrad, I took less classes and it was my worst GPA for the whole semester, because I kept feeling like I had more time to do things and then they wouldn't get done and I would just be blowing it left and right. So for me, I've definitely found that there's like this on the tipping scale of too much stuff to do. That's like the right sweet spot for me to be, you know, successful at life.
So almost like making things on purpose to hold you accountable for them.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with like my weight over the years and tournaments and stuff. It's like, I'm getting fat again. It's time to make sure I have a tournament coming up in 6 weeks so that I like clean up my diet and do the exercise and do the things I need to do, because I'm starting to get lazy and I'm not holding myself accountable. And so let me sign up for a tournament somewhere in a weight class that I know that I can make without doing anything dangerous, but that will force me to be, you know, aware of what's going on in my life.
Right. Okay. I see that. So, man, that's a very interesting one. And I like how we kind of like just flew right into it, because I was trying to see where I could, you know, ask you this question. But, you know, you were petite and then you gained weight and then lost it again, right? And then you got pregnant and now you're back.
Yeah. So like,
or how did that go?
Well, I played soccer and lacrosse competitively in high school, and I was like 130, pretty muscular, maybe 140 sometimes. And then I did nothing but smoke and play video games for, you know, 10 or 15 years. And then I was about 210 pounds when I started martial arts in December 2011. I was training and I wasn't like really cleaning up my diet a lot, but I was exercising a lot. And then, my I still remember my coaches were on the mats and they were like, so who's doing Naga in April? And I was like, I don't know what a Naga is. And my coach was like, you should do Naga. And I'm like, sure, I will do whatever this thing called Naga is, whatever. And I was like 170-ish by then, I think. Like, so some of the weight had kind of come off just by me being on the mats. I definitely cut out like sugary drinks and beer, which helped with a good, 20 or 30 pounds all by itself. And then, we did actually, it was funny because they had never had a female competitor at our school. So we thought the female weight class was 139. And so, everything's good. I'm coming down in weight for April. I'm at 142 2 days before weigh-in. Everything's going to be fine. And I happened to go online. And at the time, Naga's weight class was like 120 to 134.9. Otherwise, I was going to have to compete with people who were like 160. And I was like, holy shit, I'm 141. Like, this is the worst place to be. And I texted my coach at the time, now my husband, and Gary's like, whatever you're holding in your hand, put it in the garbage. And I'm like looking at my Wawa coffee, all frowny face as I throw it out. And I'm like, shit. And I literally cut like 8 pounds of water for my first tournament to get down to 133.9, I think I weighed in or something like that. And yeah, I won a gold medal. And then it's like, holy shit, you get bit hard, it was insane. I think the adrenaline and stuff freaked me out. So I over competed in the first 3 years. Probably did like 100 tournament matches. The adrenaline was like messing with me and the anxiety was messing with me. And I'm like, the only way to get rid of this is to just over compete and make it so that it's no big deal at all. And it worked because now like I just kind of walk into a tournament like, well, whatever. Here we go again.
I was gonna ask you, was like, did it work?
Yeah, definitely worked.
I'm a horrible. I love to compete. I love the drive. I love the training for a competition.
It's a lot of pressure though, right?
However,
when you put in all of that work and then you get there, like you sort of feel like you're going to choke on your own vomit because you're like, well, I did all this stuff. Now I have to win the thing.
So I do actually. I'm really bad. I've been trying to get better. I think last year is when I really saw an improvement, but I typically dry heave.
Yeah.
As I'm in the middle of the match.
Oh wow.
I constantly have to tell the ref like I'm fine. I'm not gonna throw up. I dry heave with the adrenaline dump and just the nerves and everything. I don't know. I did sort of the same thing you did. The first year I went really hard with tournaments. Actually, I think it was the first 5 years I went really hard with tournaments. I came out of high school as a wrestler, so it was like I needed that. I wasn't ready to let it go when I graduated high school, like the grappling world. So jiu-jitsu like just seemed like the most logical and right thing to do. And to me it was great because there was tournaments all the time. Didn't always have opponents. So as a white belt,
you started in 2010, right? I was 2011. There was nobody. it was right, pretty darn empty.
So, right, my first tournament as a white belt, I went against a purple belt because that was the only one that was there for my weight class, and my arm got turned the hell out of my arm. Like it was, I still feel that pain. My elbow still feels like I still have that. I had some fucking weird cartilage grow on it or something like that. I don't even know. But yeah, so to me it was just. I didn't really care. I saw the belt and I was like, I don't know what these fucking belts mean. All I know is I wrestled. Catch me, catch me if you can, because I did catch wrestling. So it was like, catch me if you can.
Sweet, that's awesome. We have a background in catch too.
So I saw that on your bio too, and we'll touch that in a little bit. When I started getting my first students, and again, I'm very much competition oriented. I do feel that my instructor now is trying to break me out of that a little bit because he wants me to be more rounded, self-defense as well as competition. And competition is really what drives me. And when I first started getting my first students, it was the same thing. They told me that. One in particular, the way he described the way he got before a tournament, I was like, yeah, that's me. That's me. I understand what you're going through. So now let me see if I can walk you through something that I can't walk myself through yet, but let's see if it works. And it did. However, I'm still nervous as hell every time I go compete. I did do one tournament where I broadcasted it very well. For Europeans, I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep myself accountable. I've been wanting to do this tournament for a while. I know I got what it takes. However, if I don't tell anybody, the nerves will get hold of me again, and I won't do it. So I did, and I went and competed. Did pretty good, and then now I'm I'm in that weird state to like, do I commit to this? Do I feel ready? I don't feel I'm ready, but everybody thinks I'm ready.
I find that in general, getting over that whole anxiety thing was doing a lot of competing when I didn't feel ready. I competed out of my weight class. I competed 10 pounds up, 15 pounds up, wherever I was walking. Once I started MMA, I stopped cutting for jiu-jitsu because it's just, there's only so much you can do to your body. And I forced myself. It was like, no, you said you were going to do this tournament and you didn't get your weight where you needed to. And so you're doing this one at 155 and like, good luck. And I just forced myself to compete when the odds weren't in my favor as often as I could. And that sort of made it dulled losing for me. And once losing got dulled, then my growth took off because the losing matches are just so much more informative about where you're at.
So how did that affect you though, knowing your skill level? Like, did it ever make you question how good your skill actually was or not?
No.
Or is that the point, realizing that you're not as good as you might think you are?
There's always going to be someone better. Like, I'm not going to be the next Michelle Nicolini. It's not going to happen. I don't have the time to commit. I probably don't have the raw talent that she has. Like, somebody is always going to be better than me. And so if somebody's always going to be better than me, when I go to a tournament, I'm going to find some of those people and they're going to beat me. But what they're going to give me in return is the exposure of some weakness that I was completely unaware that I had. And then I'm going to go back with my husband and with my teammates at my school, and I'm going to fix that. And hopefully the next time, if I lose, it's not going to be because of that. It's going to be because of something else. And I'm just going to keep doing that because that's the only way that I can get to the best that I can be. And I feel like I'm on the way there. Even with the losses, I feel like I'm on the way there. And at the end of the day, the only justification I'll need when I get my black belt is that I did better than I did yesterday.
Very, very good input. Yeah. I see that. I'm gonna really work on that. I really like that. The idea of putting yourself out there just like that, and give or take, it's like, well, they were better than me today.
Right, but it doesn't mean they'll be better than you tomorrow. There was a woman that I competed against three times at different tournaments. And the first two times, I definitely attacked better than she did, but she was better at the point game than I was. And it put me in a situation where in the last 30 seconds, like I had to really go for it. And then I ended up getting submitted. And that person was like, the first time I lost in, 5 seconds. And the next time I lost in, at the end of the match, just on the points. And by the third time I went up against her, I got the score up to 12-0 before I submitted her. And so like, there are people that you'll encounter along the way, especially at the local tournaments, that will be good standards by which to hold yourself accountable because you probably will see them again. And I definitely don't want to be a black belt that's really bad at something. Like you see a lot of these folks that just tear it up. They don't ever lose, or if they do, they don't talk about their losses too much. And it's like, I just don't think there's a whole lot of pride to be had in being, a one-trick pony. Like, I don't want to pull closed guard and never open my legs. I'm never going to play that way. It's never going to happen. I'm not interested. I understand that at the higher levels, and I've seen it, that at the higher levels, that's what everybody's doing. They're playing for the advantage or they're playing for the sweep. And that's just not going to be me. And if that means I lose, then that's okay. I'm willing to make that concession.
Yeah, yes, I agree with that very, very much because, so I have this conversation a lot of the times as well when I go watch like Fight to Wins or when I watch flow grappling tournaments and things like that. People always ask me, which ones do you like the most? Who are your favorite competitors? Like, well, there's the ones that are making moves out there that are, black belts or whatever higher rankings that are known for a specific technique. That's great for me because if I want to learn something, I want to learn from somebody that's mastered that specific thing. However, when I go watch a tournament for entertainment, the ones I enjoy watching the most are purple belts because they know just the right amount of technique, but not enough to where they're stagnant all the time.
Right. They're still
I hate
learning.
those tournaments.
Yeah.
Right. I hate those tournaments where it's like, you got two great legends, two great black belt legends.
Right. And they're going to grip fight for the next 8 minutes. Like, oh my God, really?
Exactly. So to me, then I kind of look at them like, wait, but aren't you charging like $100 and some every seminar and teaching me how to break a grip and take the fight to the ground where jiu-jitsu is supposed to go to?
Right. No, we have, like, it's funny when I compete, my husband and I laugh, like I have a 1 minute rule. I won't stay on the feet for more than a minute. I don't care how we get to the ground, but I'm not standing for more than a minute. If we can't figure it out, I'm not against pulling guard. It's not my preference. I actually do like to play a little bit of a stand-up game, but like I am definitely not going to a ref's decision because we pushed each other back and forth for 7 minutes. Like I could not possibly be less interested in that.
I think that's typically what I do as well. I force a takedown, and because I'd rather have a scramble.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to grapple. We're
right.
Like I'm taking my son to wrestling all year. That's a different sport. It's an awesome sport, but that's not what we're here for.
Right. Now, I have found it a little bit hard now that I'm quite bigger than I used to be. So, again, when I first started jiu-jitsu, I was straight out of high school. I played every sport, but I tell everybody every sport was just to keep me conditioning for wrestling season.
Right.
That was it. I was like, I enjoyed them. I can still play some of them. Like, I also enjoy them. However, my thing was, like, my job at that time was wrestling. And the whole year was, how do you stay in shape for it? And it was that. Just sports. Just play all the sports out there. Soccer for the running, tennis for the running, track for the... You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, everything was for that. Now, the first couple tournaments that I did in jiu-jitsu, I was still at my regular weight class. As the, time got passed me by and marriage came and laziness got a hold of me and all these kinds of adult things that I don't really like. I wish I could just send adult stuff back. So the weight classes, right, are getting a little bit bigger now. For women, they're adding a lot more weight classes and different things. However, we still have that 160 and up cap.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. No I encountered that when I was coming down for my pregnancy. I'm like, they're calling us for the super heavy division, and the guy's like, I walked right by you because you don't look like you're super heavy, and I'm like, indeed, yet here we are. Like, whatever.
Right. So I'm kind of like in between with that, right? Because I feel like getting bigger has given me some sort of different compassion and understanding towards those women that have always been big and are trying the sport to get healthier and better for themselves. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So I understand like right now as I stand, it sucks for someone that's 160 and they typically, might walk at 159, but with the gi, they got bumped up or whatever, that has to go against me. However, I don't think we have enough women to separate that specific weight class, the super heavy weight class.
I don't think we do at the local tournaments, but I think at the big shows, there's enough people that show up for that. I mean, they just did it for the age groups, which personally I think was a little premature. I'm a big fan of the Masters women movement being, I'm going to turn 38 in January. So I'm definitely down for it. And I'm excited to see that there's definitely more Masters participation. But I think the fact that they went from just Masters 1 to Masters 1 through 7, even for the local tournaments, just took a few people and spread them out. I wish they would have done like 2 divisions, like, up through Masters 3 is this and up through Masters 7 is the other one or something like that. Because I think they diluted it a little too much, a little early, in my opinion.
So do you think for weight classes, maybe 160 to 180 would be one?
Correct. That's exactly what I think. I think there's room at the top there. And I think you need to have room because like the open weight is like, it's open. Like, mm-hmm. And I'm down for going with larger people. I train with larger people all the time. When I'm getting ready for a tournament, I tend to enforce a double my weight limit because I think at that point you have to offset too much and my speed becomes unfair to you. And I don't know that either of us are really getting anything out of it. So not from a safety standpoint so much as if you can't be in a proper position to drop your weight, then you're training poorly. And if I'm training slower to counter for you, then I'm training poorly too. And we're actually both setting each other back. So it's better for us to maintain partners that are a little closer to our size. But I had one tournament where I went to and they were like, will you take a match up weight? And I was like, sure. And then my husband points to the wall and there's a woman there who's like 400 pounds. And he's like, they mean her. Like, they're not being honest with you. You're 135 pounds. I don't think you should go 100% with someone who's 3 times your body weight. I think the potential for injury is too high. A training scenario is one thing, but a tournament situation is a very different thing.
Right. Okay. So, and that's kind of what I see now, though. And I don't know. I kind of go back to that thought, like, well, what you just said. You do have the speed.
Correct.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do the absolute divisions anyway, so it doesn't matter, right? Like, if I place on the podium, I'll almost always do absolute. The only exception I have is that if I get a consolation medal, meaning like I got second place because there were only 2 of us, then I tend not to do the absolute because I feel like you should have to win your way into the absolute division. So, other than that, you know, if I place on the podium and I earned that place on the podium, then I do the absolute division.
I see. Okay. So, going back to that question, do you think fluctuating, and you have experienced both ends of the spectrum, you know, being overweight and then also being very fit, do you think it's giving you an edge to understand specifically on the instructor side, like how to teach these people who are either struggling, you know, with...
It's a completely different game. It's a completely different game. And it's important, I think, that we give people games that fit their body style. And again, I mean, this is yet another reason why we like keeping our class sizes small, so that we can give people that sort of attention. When I was coming down from this pregnancy, I competed, I think the highest weight I competed at was 185. I did a Naga at 185. And my opponent was, you know, 15 or so pounds lighter than me. But I used to play inverted, a very like speedy guard oriented game, because when I first started training and I was small, all the guys were bigger. So my guard got good. My top game didn't see a whole lot of attention. And then when I came back, it's like, well, when I go inverted, I feel like I'm going to choke myself unconscious. So I can't do that as much. My legs are heavy. I can't move as fast. So now I'm going to work on my pressure passing and my top game. And I'm going to try to make that more of a thing for me. When I'm on the bottom, I'm going to work to try to get up more than I am going to try to hang out in guard, because guard retention as a heavier person is really difficult.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. So I've found that too. So when even now when I coach people, I find it very easy to coach smaller people, because that game's very much ingrained in me, specifically because of wrestling.
Right.
But I do find that I have a lot more compassion and patience with bigger people, and I'm able to, you know, kind of, I don't know when to say steer them in any direction, because I'm in that process right now, you know, trying to figure it out. But it has cost me a lot of training and trying to relearn a lot of things like pressure passing. I never used that. It was never about pressure for me. It was always about speed.
Yep.
And I think it took me about, man, I don't know, I want to say like a year maybe to figure out the fact that I had weight that I could use to smash people. And, you know, people would always tell me, like, but you're so big. Like, why aren't you using your weight? I'm like,
Right, because especially as women, we feel very self-conscious about it, right? Like, being called heavy when you're 135 pounds is a compliment. Being called heavy when you're 185 pounds is, like, still probably a compliment, but maybe it's not, right? Like, it puts you into, like, this sort of different area. And it's funny, too, because we have, you know, a couple of bigger guys. And when I was bigger coming down, I still had the technique that they didn't have, because they were white belts. And, you know, I was a brown belt, and I would get on top of them, and you know, it's like you could see that they're like they're being crushed, and they're not going to ask me to go lighter because they still have 10 pounds on me, or they're only 10 pounds lighter than me, but they're a guy, right? Like, they're not gonna, there's no request that you can send me. And then especially as I continued to lose weight and I was able to maintain that heavier game, it's like, well, now you outweigh me by 40 pounds, so I don't feel bad for you suffering underneath me. Like, this is the nature of the game.
Right, exactly. So, and, you know, you said something specific, like being called heavy at 135 is not an insult, really. But being called heavy when you weigh more than 160 tends to start getting like it stings a little bit. And then,
right, you don't know how
I
it's
mean,
intended.
forget it. Right, and then forget it if you're over 200 pounds. At that point, you're just like, should I, what? Like, what did you just say to me? Like, it's
Right, it
just,
becomes an
it's either
insult.
heartbreaking. Right, it's either heartbreaking or inferior. Makes you mad, makes you pissed off. I
Yeah.
can't even say that word. A word. But, so also with that, right, being called heavy or whatnot, for those women, and I, even then I always say those women, like, I am one of them now.
Right, I've
So,
been there.
or, right, exactly. So how does a girl, fight through that? Like, what was your mentality during that time when you didn't know you were heavier? And
You got to use what you got, right? Like, so first of all, we compete in weight classes. So I'm not going to be ashamed to use my weight when we're competing in a weight class that I got on the same scale you did and I met the same requirements you did. Like, that's why we're here. I don't feel,
right,
guilty using my strength at 135. I'm not going to feel guilty using my weight at 185 pounds. I have a weight belt that's pretty new to training that comes to my open mat. And, she's over 200 pounds, super awesome lady, and she's killing it. She's doing a great job. And we high five the first time she comes out, and she's like, so I'm big and I'm strong. And that's really all I got going for me because I'm a no stripe white belt. And I was like, that's cool. That's awesome. Let's do it. I was like, you use what you got. And if it's too much for me, I'll tap and let you know that you need to lighten up a little bit. But let's just go with it and see how it goes. It's fine. It's totally fine.
see, and to me it really made me upset the first time I was told, like, hey, you're big. And it was coming from a, I know it was coming from a place of not love, but like, I want you to be better.
Right.
I want you to understand you could be a freaking murderer out there. However, I was too stuck in my ways, and it was a very much, that's why I didn't even like bother with pressure passing or anything. Like, I always went straight on my back and wanted to, or just like moved around a lot, and then I would get gassed, and I'd be like, God damn it, like, what's going on here? But it did make me upset. And at the beginning, to me, it was like, well, screw you. I'm going to show you that I can be big and I can still move as if I'm 135. Haha.
Right.
No, I couldn't.
Mechanically, you cannot. I learned that too.
Yeah, I was like, what? My knees hurt now? What? I can't. I'm still running and you're already on the other side of the mat. Great. But, so I think it took, and there's this other black belt who, very awkwardly, I asked her, I was like, man, like, you're big too. And you're a black belt and you're killing it out there. How? Just how? And she said, because I have weight and I use pressure passing a lot. And I was like, what?
Right.
She was like,
if you're going to live the big girl life, you got to embrace that shit. There's nothing wrong with it. That's
right.
the style you have to play. And there's nothing wrong with it at all. You can't play the tiny person's game at that weight. You just can't.
So we had a great conversation. Then we proceeded to have a great training for a week. I'm getting ready to leave this weekend again to go one of her camps. And I'm super excited now. Like, now I get totally excited when I get bigger girls and girls that are higher ranking and are killing it out there and are not 145.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to tell you, there's some of my favorite training partners too, even now that I'm coming down in weight. Because A, you're not going to get any better functional strength training than you're going to get with a big girl that knows how to move. And B, I still need to be able to play my game against a larger opponent, mostly for self-defense reasons, but also because I still do the absolute division. So I need to be able to survive that. I need to not have anxiety when I'm underneath someone of that size. I need to be able to keep my head and do what I need to do. I love training with bigger folks as long as they're, safe. And I feel the same way about smaller folks. I don't like training with unsafe smaller folks either.
So with that being said, though, however, right, I don't feel that I'm where I'm supposed to be at. I feel that I'm still too big, both health-wise and just because of my natural way of being before. I don't know. I don't know if I'm holding on to those golden days too much, but I still feel like I could be 100 times better if I was smaller. So my question to you is though, do you think there's a real space out there for big women jiu-jitsu as there is for big men jiu-jitsu? Or do you think jiu-jitsu for women is very much at that like 140, like that welterweight, or
Oh, definitely not.
kind of.
Definitely not. I don't think it's just restricted to the smaller people because stylistically they're very different matches. I mean, Gabby Garcia is fantastic to watch. She's awesome. She's one of my favorite people to watch. We need more people of that size at that caliber. That would be amazing. I'd watch those matches all day long. It's the same thing as watching UFC, right? You watch the heavyweights, they have like a lot of power, perhaps one strike knockout. And then you have like the little guys at 125 that are just running around like lunatics, running circles around each other. I think both are fun to watch. I think both are exciting to watch. And I think both are very different games. And that's what makes them both interesting and both necessary in terms of like the spectator aspect of the sport.
I was actually gonna say I hate those 125 UFC fights.
I'm just like every time they weigh in, I'm like, whatever, dude. You're 20 pounds lighter than me and you're ripped. Just go home and have a burger. No, I'm just kidding. I used to fight down at 15, I don't know. I can't throw too many stones.
Yeah, I don't know why I don't like them. However, I also don't really like the very big guys. Sometimes, like, man, I forgot this UFC fighter's name, but he was hilarious. There was like a whole thing that went around because he took his shorts off in the middle of the octagon and was just like, my balls are hot. Like, no, dude, put your pants back on. But he's a big motherfucker. But I do see, so I have another question then. How did you decide, or how did it come about to say, hey, I'm on the bigger side, but I don't want to be here. Let me get back down to 140, 130.
So for me, I think it just came down to the health aspects of it and having kids, especially now having the second kid at an older age, right? I think they actually call it like, advanced maternal age, whatever nice way they have of saying that I'm particularly old to be bearing children. I just feel an obligation to my family to be physically healthy. And I'm actually fine if all of my numbers are good at 160 and that's a healthy weight. Like I don't shy away from it. I'm definitely in a different boat coming back from this pregnancy. I'm never going down to 115 again. I probably won't do MMA, so I wouldn't go that low for jiu-jitsu anyhow. But I'm definitely not going to go that low again. I used to compete down at feather once in a while. Some of my worst performances were down at feather though. I walked at like 130 even. And so feather's 129 with the gi. And so that those last like 4 or 5 pounds just sort of sucked the life out of me. And I just decided that, first of all, with No Gi Worlds, I got on the scale at 128 for the 136 division. Everybody else was like miserable and, trying to make sure they were going to make weight. And I'm like eating granola bars and having the time of my life. And I think that was when I realized that the brackets are 11 pounds and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as long as I'm close, right? Like, so if I am competing at middle at 147, it's not vastly different than me competing at 136. If I'm healthy and I'm lean and I'm strong and I'm well hydrated, then if I lose, it's definitely not because I bumped a weight class. And I actually get really pissed off when people talk about, well, I'm fighting up a weight class. All right, simmer down. You're fighting 5 pounds heavier than you normally do, and nobody can cut for this event. So you're not fighting up a weight class. Like, you need to just take a seat because that's not what's happening.
Right.
So, I get a little annoyed at that whole, like, the way people describe it. I'm like, all right, that's not what you're doing, but that's okay. I feel like they're sort of trying to explain the loss before it happens. I think that as long as you're healthy and you're training at a weight, you should be able to walk onto a competition mat and compete there successfully. And if you can't, then you need to get better at jiu-jitsu.
Right. So another thing I saw was, and I found it very interesting, and I didn't go snooping too much. I don't want other people to think I'm over here doing IP work on them or whatever, but or PI work. But Are you vegan?
So I am 95% vegan, 5% vegetarian type of thing. So we keep a mostly vegan house. I do put honey on my pancakes because I think agave tastes terrible. When we go on vacation, we're vegetarian because it's really hard unless you're in like California or New York to eat out vegan. It's almost impossible. So we do
Yes.
relax a little bit and allow for cheese. Once in a while, we'll pick up some eggs from the farmer down the road whose chickens are running around merrily doing whatever they like. Um, but yeah, we we watched like a bunch of documentaries in 2016, and we're like, this sounds like bullshit, but sure, we'll give it a shot. And so we did a like a 5-day juice cleanse, and then we did 2 weeks of eating vegan, and I lost like 15 pounds, and I felt fucking awesome. I felt so good, like buzzing with energy, didn't need coffee anymore. And I was like, holy shit. And I ate like filet mignon for dinner every night. I was a carnivore of carnivores. And yeah, I haven't had a piece of meat since 2016. And it's funny because I'll see commercials and I'm like, oh, that looks really good. I remember how good that tastes. And I'm like, do I want one? No, actually, I don't. I don't want it. Like nobody is holding a gun to my head. It's not like if I decide to go back to eating meat tomorrow that like somebody shows up and points and laughs at me. But I feel great. I feel awesome. So this is just how we eat now.
So that was the same year actually I went vegan as well, 2016. And however, if I did decide to eat meat again, I would have somebody at my door, and that would be my sister. Um, um, Simply because I kind of converted her. I made her go vegan too when I went, and I feel like she would come and be like, "What the hell, yo?" But yeah, I also don't drink coffee at all.
Yeah, we're decaf
However,
now. I gave it up during pregnancy and never went back.
um, it makes it a little hard sometimes though with some friends because I like my roommate right now. She's very much like a coffee person. Like she loves going to all these like quirky like coffee shops and things like that. And I'm kind of like, okay, I'll come with you, but I don't really drink coffee.
Right.
And I did have one last weekend when I was with her, and I literally had 3 sips, and I was like wired. Like, I was just like, oh my God, I can't. Like, what's going on with me right now? And she was like, oh my God, like, what's wrong with you? Are you like hyperactive or something? Like, no, you just gave coffee to somebody that's never been a coffee person.
Right.
I don't consume that kind of caffeine or anything like that. But I thought that was very cool, and I would definitely like to have you back on the show so we can talk about that part a little bit more. Like I said, you're a very interesting person. As soon as I saw the article, I was like, I have to have her on the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll have to give credit to Avery. She's a great writer.
Oh yeah, she did great too. So, but I know right now you're trying to get ready to go camping and go back to your life or whatever. Yep. So I just have a couple of last questions for you before I'll let you go.
Okay.
And one of them is, where would you like to see the sport of jiu-jitsu maybe in the next 5-10 years?
I definitely still want to see more women, and I want to see older women. Like I got into it at 30, and I had your background. I had the like ex-high school athlete, unlike you, I didn't continue straight out. I took a nice 10-year break to get fat. But I think that there's this tremendous potential to tap into, especially like seniors in high school who aren't quite good enough to compete at the college level or who aren't going to go to the Olympics, and just like sit them down and be like, look, I have this great sport for you. You'll learn self-defense. It will keep you healthy and maintaining this body that you've spent your whole childhood building. And it can be just such a huge part of your life that could be good for you. And I think that if we can get that transition, specifically the wrestlers, of course, because there's nothing really for them to do other than MMA after they come out. But also the older folks. I mean, when we talk about all the stuff that we read in the news now about the risks of falling and dementia and all that, physical activity is so critical. And just walking alone isn't enough. You need to be actively working on things that require you to maintain your physical balance and whatnot. And nothing's going to do that more for you than being on the mats. And I mean, we see there's a couple of women that I've come across online who compete at like Masters 7 and Masters 8. And I just think that's the most awesome thing ever. I mean, when I started doing Naga back in 2012, there were 3 weight classes. I had one girl. I moved up to expert within a year because there was nobody there. And now I'm looking at the registrations for the tournament we're going to this weekend, and there's like 8 girls in the intermediate division. And I'm like, yes, this is awesome. There's women over 30, there's women over 40, and we just need more of them to come and try the sport and to get into it. I just think it'll be huge. I think it'll be like an explosion. I think the women have a lot to offer too from a spectator standpoint, because women go for it in a way that men never do. No offense, guys.
Well, and right, exactly. And man, I really wish we had more time, because now we're getting to some really, really, really good things too. Not that the rest wasn't, but like this is very inspiring. This is what this series is going to be geared towards, because I feel that the name of the show is called Roll With It, and although men are great and they tend to just go and bust walls down and get things done, I feel that women are the pinnacle of having to always roll with the punches. You just go with it. You just, okay, here's another one. Let me just get through it. Let me get through this hurdle and things like that. So what would you say could be done right now to enhance the sport or to enhance it?
So we're in a good position now where women now have high school wrestling, right? So I think we're going to have a good feeder system coming from that, but it'll be important to do outreach specifically to the high schools to try to bring them over to jiu-jitsu, because it's just such an easy transition for them to make. And then beyond that, like, I've just never been a fan personally of women's only classes. I know a lot of schools do them. I've talked with a lot of high-level women, some who offer them, some who don't. I think it's just a matter of making sure that the schools that we have available are female-friendly environments. They don't need a female-specific class to be female-friendly, but you need to make sure that you're keeping yourself in check as far as the toxic male atmosphere that can very quickly kind of take things over and make it like a fight club. We had a new student who came in recently who took a trial class somewhere else, and she said they were like, we don't really do girls here. And she was like, okay. So, the more that we have academies that are run by women or run by men and women, both are fine too, or men who are just, really aware of the type of environment necessary to foster female growth, I think that that's going to be a huge step along the way.
That's perfect. That sounds really good. I definitely see that happening around a little bit more. I do think the male instructors are finding a little bit hard on how to coach women and have that real like tradition of a women, like a real women team. Or not just real women team, but as a whole, like equal, like men and women.
Just another person on the mats. I think most women, right, that's exactly all they want to be, is just another person on the mat. They don't want to get dodged when it's time to roll. They don't want to sit there by themselves when nobody asks them to go. Like, we just need to include them. That's all. Nobody's asking for any special treatment, just inclusion.
Well, and I feel like what happened to that student you're talking about, the first thing that came to my head, I would have been like, well, good. I'm glad you don't really do girls here, because I'm just a grappler.
Right.
Like,
but at the same time, as a female, do you want to go and train in that environment? If that's their first reaction to you. I mean, I think for most of us, that answer is no, even if we feel that way in terms of gender equality.
Right. Definitely. Exactly.
Because it means that you've identified me by my sexual organs before I even made it all the way through the door. Right. So.
Right. Well, and I know there's a whole lot more that we can talk about, and I'm really hoping this series takes on, and I'm really hoping we can, do something with it. I hope, for me, it's great. I love to sit down and talk to all kinds of people, specifically women who are empowered, or are empowered by jiu-jitsu in their careers. So, but really, I want to get this out there so that more women can feel what I personally feel, and I'm sure you do too, which is jiu-jitsu empowers you. Like, it gives you this kind of feeling of like, I'm a badass woman.
In a very awesome way. Like I tell people all the time, it's important that we not mistake the time that we spend doing jujitsu, specifically sports jujitsu, to think that it makes us invulnerable in the street, right? Because at the end of the day, if a 300-pound man comes swinging at me, I'm probably in trouble, especially if he has a weapon. But what it's given me is that when I'm walking down my half of the sidewalk, and I'm very clearly on my half of the sidewalk, and other people are walking towards me 3 across, I don't move off the sidewalk anymore. I just don't. I'm not looking to pick a fight. I'm not looking to be aggressive, but I'm here to own the space that I'm in, and I'm in that space in a fair way, and I'm not yielding it. And that's what martial arts has given me.
Yes, I love it. And that's a really good note to end on. Gillian, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope to have you on the show later on again, and we can continue to discuss this. And man, keep sharing that positive attitude and that like badass woman. You can do pretty much anything. I mean, I feel like you already kind of did, but I'm sure you're not stopping anytime soon.
No, I don't plan to. I just want to give a quick shout out to my husband, who's awesome, Gary Davis. We own Brazen Martial Arts in Central New Jersey, and we are under Eric Paulson of Combat Submission Wrestling, and he's in California. And all that I do would be impossible without the very awesome coaches and teammates and stuff that I have going on. So my circle makes it possible.
Awesome. I love to hear that. I love to hear the fact that you have a supporting husband and a supporting team around you. And I hope someday we can cross around the mats. And,
absolutely. I would love it. I'm always down to roll. Always down to roll.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Gillian. We will see you sometime on the mat. We will speak to you soon again, and have a really good day. Have a good camping trip, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.